The sun sinks over Jeddah, and the air thickens with a silence that feels almost sacred. Inside a modest villa near the Red Sea, an old man listens to the slow rhythm of his own breathing. The man is Idi Amin Dada, once the Lion of Uganda, now a ghost in exile. His hands, once used to salute soldiers and sign death warrants, tremble against the edge of his chair. The walls hold no banners, no portraits, no power. Only memories, heavy, unrelenting, and sharp as broken glass. Outside, the call to prayer drifts through the heat. He closes his eyes. In the darkness behind them, he still sees the faces of those who cheered, those who feared, and those who never returned home. Power had been his kingdom, violence his language. Now time has become his jailer. The desert wind hums like a requiem, carrying whispers of a name the world has tried to forget. Here, in this quiet corner of Saudi Arabia, the story of a monster's final days begins. The year is 1979. Uganda burns under a sun that seems to mock its suffering. From Kampala to the shores of Lake Victoria, the echoes of gunfire and screams still cling to the humid air. The dictator, who once ruled with the arrogance of a god, has fallen. Idi Amin Dada, the self-proclaimed conqueror of the British Empire, the man who called himself the last king of Scotland, is now nothing more than a fugitive surrounded by the ruins of his empire. His army, once parading with swaggering confidence, has dissolved into chaos. Tanzanian troops advance from the south, the rebel forces of exiles and vengeance closing in from every direction. The walls of his palace, once glittering with imported marble and stolen gold, stand hollow, echoing with ghosts. Amin flees in haste, his convoy of loyalists weaving through roads he once paved for his triumphs. He leaves behind wives, children, and a country drowning in blood. The laughter that once shook the presidential mansion has vanished, replaced by the rattle of engines and the bitter taste of defeat. His eyes, once full of theatrical bravado, now dart nervously toward the horizon. The Lion of Uganda, as he loved to be called, had risen from a lowly soldier in the British colonial army to a ruler whose word was death and whose smile meant ruin. For 8 years, he transformed Uganda into his own stage of terror and spectacle. Markets overflowed with scarcity, radios broadcast his praises like hymns, and the shadows carried the scent of fear. He made the people bow, not to faith or flag, but to his madness. When bodies floated down the Nile, no one dared to speak. When his portraits hung in every school and church, even prayers trembled. Now the master of fear is himself hunted, and the same river he stained with lives seems to mock him as he escapes by helicopter into the uncertain night. Amin first seeks refuge in Libya. Muammar Gaddafi, fellow strongman and self-styled revolutionary, welcomes him with the wary camaraderie of one tyrant to another. For a time, Amin believes he has found an ally. Gaddafi offers him temporary shelter, but the warmth soon fades. The Libyan leader, seeing Amin's fall as a stain rather than a symbol, distances himself. Even among dictators, failure is contagious. Amin, restless and humiliated, feels the isolation closing in. He watches the desert sun burn each day into sameness. His pride cannot survive the stillness. He begins to write letters to leaders who no longer respond. His uniform hangs untouched, medals dulling in the desert air. The call from Saudi Arabia comes like a lifeline. The kingdom offers asylum on one condition: silence. No politics, no interviews, no leadership. A quiet life for a man who once filled nations with noise. Amin accepts. He boards a plane to Jeddah, not as a ruler, but as an exile escorted under the wary eyes of guards. The engines hum like a dirge. He looks out the window at the sands below, imagining they are the rolling plains of Uganda. For the first time, he realizes he will never return. In Jeddah, Amin is given a modest villa near the Red Sea. The house is clean but empty, the furniture plain, the walls bare. The scent of incense mingles with the sterile quiet of exile. He walks through the rooms with slow, uncertain steps, a lion pacing in a cage built by his own hands. The neighbors whisper, some recognizing him, others pretending not to. Children are told not to stare at the large man who once ruled an African nation with an iron fist. Saudi security keeps discreet watch. His life becomes a shadow, a daily ritual of prayer, food, and the slow erosion of grandeur. Each morning, he rises before dawn, performing ablutions with trembling hands. His faith, once used as a weapon of politics, now becomes his only refuge. The call to prayer fills the air, and he kneels facing Mecca, whispering verses for forgiveness. Whether he truly seeks redemption or merely comfort in ritual is a question history cannot answer. He eats sparingly, preferring stews and bread, sometimes the spiced meats that remind him of Kampala's markets. His wives tend to him quietly, their eyes full of weariness rather than devotion. The children grow restless, forbidden to speak of Uganda, forbidden to ask about the ghosts that haunt their father's dreams. Yet Amin's mind never escapes the past. In sleep, he hears drums from his youth, gunfire from his palace, and the screams that filled the corridors of power. He remembers the parades, the medals pinned to his chest, the roaring crowds, the absurd pageantry of a ruler drunk on his own myth. But in the silent villa, memory becomes punishment. He watches television, rarely the news, mostly sports or sermons, avoiding any mention of Africa. The years blur. He grows heavier, slower, his booming voice reduced to a soft mumble. The once towering general now spends afternoons watching the waves crash against the Jeddah shore. Occasionally, journalists track him down. Some manage to find his number or approach his door. He rarely answers, but when he does, he insists he was a misunderstood patriot, a man who loved his country too much. He speaks of British betrayal, of internal enemies, of divine missions. He tells the same stories, clinging to the illusion that history will someday vindicate him. But the world has moved on. Uganda rebuilds under new hands, its people carrying scars that time cannot fully erase. Amin's name, once spoken in fear, becomes a curse, a lesson, a warning. Years turn to decades. The lion's roar fades into a wheeze. He develops kidney failure, spends his days in and out of hospitals. The nurses know who he is, but treat him like any old man. In their silence, he senses judgment. On a hospital bed overlooking the same Red Sea that had greeted his exile, Idi Amin Dada drifts between dreams of power and the reality of decay. The ceiling light becomes his final sun. He asks for water, for prayers, for forgiveness. Whether those prayers reach any heaven is a question history leaves unanswered. When he dies in August 2003, there are no grand funerals, no crowds, no flags at half-mast. Only a few relatives attend, standing quietly as the desert wind moves across the sand. Uganda refuses to take his body. He is buried in Jeddah, far from the soil he ruled and ruined. The grave is unmarked, the ceremony swift. The man who once demanded the world's attention now vanishes into anonymity. But silence does not erase the echo. In Kampala, elders still tell stories of his reign, of markets emptied by soldiers, of laughter punished, of families vanished into the night. In Jeddah, the villa remains, the curtains drawn, the air still heavy with the memory of a tyrant's breath. Time swallows his empire, yet the shadow of his rule lingers in whispers and nightmares. The Lion of Uganda has fallen, but the scars of his roar remain on the soul of a nation. The Red Sea glows like molten copper in the evening light. From his balcony, Idi Amin watches the tide roll in slow and silent. Years have passed since the fall, and the rhythms of exile have become his only kingdom. In this stillness, he rules nothing but memory. Yet within that invisible dominion, he clings to his delusions of power. To the few who still visit, he remains His Excellency, Field Marshal Al-Haji, Dr. Idi Amin Dada. Titles without throne, rank without command. He insists on being addressed formally, even as his voice cracks under the weight of years. His servants nod out of habit, not reverence. His children, growing into adulthood, speak in hushed tones, carrying a name that feels more like a curse than a legacy. Inside the villa, time feels suspended. The sound of the air conditioner hums endlessly, blending with the distant call to prayer. Amin spends hours staring at old photographs, soldiers saluting, him in military uniform adorned with medals, grinning before parades of terrified loyalty. The man in those photographs looks like a god among mortals. The man holding them now is swollen, weary, his eyes glazed with the fog of fading memory. Sometimes he laughs to himself, repeating the names of lost generals, as if summoning them back to formation. At night, he dreams of drums. They come from the horizon of his mind, the same tribal rhythms that once announced his power, now thundering like a warning. He wakes drenched in sweat, heart pounding, reaching for a weapon that no longer exists. His wives speak of his moods in whispers. Some days he is calm, quoting scripture, claiming that Allah will judge him, not men. On others, he rages, shouting at shadows, blaming invisible enemies for his downfall. His temper has not left him, only dulled by exhaustion. Once he orders his sons to line up and march, mimicking the drills he taught his soldiers decades ago. They obey half-heartedly, unsure whether to laugh or cry. He commands them to salute, and for a moment, the old gleam returns to his eyes. Then he forgets the order entirely, sitting back down, muttering about fish markets in Kampala. The memory slips away as quickly as it came. Outside, Jeddah thrives with commerce and faith, its people moving forward while Amin remains frozen in his private ruin. He spends his afternoons driving aimlessly through the streets in an old car guarded by silence. Few recognize him. Those who do avert their gaze. The world that once trembled at his name now barely remembers. But within the small Ugandan diaspora, stories of him still circulate, half myth, half warning. Some call him a hero who stood against colonial arrogance, others a butcher who devoured his own people. The truth, as always, lies somewhere between madness and man. Amin's past does not rest. It haunts the dreams of those who survived his rule, the widows, the orphans, the exiles who still carry scars invisible to the eye. In Uganda, new generations are born under leaders who promise never to repeat his mistakes, yet the fear he cultivated lingers in institutions, in silences, in the way people hesitate before speaking truth to power. His ghost hovers over the nation not as a spirit, but as a warning carved into memory, and in exile, Amin senses this. Sometimes he speaks to no one, muttering about destiny. They will remember me, he says. They must. His health worsens. The rich food and long inactivities swell his body. Diabetes, kidney failure, and heart problems chain him to his bed. He grows irritable, desperate to escape the weakness, Nurses come and go, professionals bound by oath, not sympathy. One young nurse later recalls the strange power in his presence, even in sickness. The way he would fix her with a stare that felt both hollow and commanding. She describes how he prayed often, reciting verses in a trembling voice, pausing to ask if God forgives everything. She never answered. Perhaps there was no answer. As the days blur, the villa becomes a shrine of contradictions. The scent of medicine mixes with the aroma of Ugandan coffee his family still brews each morning. The walls bear no portraits of him by Saudi instruction, but in his private room, hidden behind a curtain, hangs a single photograph of himself as president. He stares at it daily as though waiting for the man in the picture to speak, to remind him that once he mattered. But the silence stretches on. The monster of Uganda is now a man shrinking into insignificance. History has turned its gaze elsewhere. When the end nears, there is no cinematic justice, no thunderous reckoning, only the steady rhythm of a failing heart and the hush of desert air pressing against closed windows. His family gathers around him. The doctor murmurs something clinical. His eldest son begins to cry. Amin looks at them with an expression unreadable, not fear, not peace, just exhaustion. He whispers words too faint to capture, something about home, about the river, about forgiveness. Then the breath stops. News of his death spreads quickly but without urgency. In Uganda, there are no parades of mourning, only cautious relief. Some older citizens whisper prayers, others curse his name. There are those who had fled his purges who shed tears, not for the man, but for the years stolen. The government refuses to repatriate his body. He will not return to the soil he defiled, a minister declares, and so Amin is buried in Jeddah, wrapped in white cloth, laid beneath the sand of a foreign land. His grave is unmarked, no guards, no flags, no brass bands. The once immortal lion sleeps under an indifferent sky, yet exile does not end with death. In the markets of Kampala, old men still tell stories of the days when soldiers took whatever they pleased, when laughter was a risk, when fear was law. In bars, musicians sing cautious verses about the tyrant who fell, his name coded in metaphor. Historians debate his psychology. Was he a product of colonial trauma, a paranoid narcissist, or simply evil unmasked? Psychologists describe him as the perfect study of unchecked ego. But for ordinary Ugandans, the analysis means little. What remains are the faces of those lost, the empty chairs at family tables, the quiet dread inherited by generations. In Jeddah, Amin's family continues their lives in anonymity. His wives fade into obscurity, his children scatter, some to Africa, some to Europe, seeking to escape his shadow. A few defend his memory, insisting he loved Uganda, that he was misunderstood, that the West exaggerated his crimes. Others remain silent, preferring to let the desert bury what history cannot forgive. The villa stands empty now, its curtains drawn, the furniture gathering dust. Visitors say that on certain nights, when the wind shifts, one can hear the faint sound of military drums from within, though no one plays. Years later, filmmakers and journalists rediscover his story. Documentaries frame him as both monster and man, a symbol of Africa's dark, post-colonial struggles. Actors portray him with charisma and menace. Audiences gasp and then they move on. But behind the dramatizations, the real Amin remains elusive, a man whose cruelty was theatrical, whose vanity was boundless, and whose fall was as lonely as it was inevitable. In the end, exile is not just a place, it is a mirror, one that forces a man to face the reflection he spent his life avoiding. Idi Amin's throne was built from fear, and in exile, fear became his only companion. No generals, no armies, no nation to command, or only silence. And in that silence, history finds its justice. As the Red Sea rolls endlessly against the shore, the story of Idi Amin Dada becomes another frozen chapter in the chronicle of power and decay. A reminder that every empire, no matter how brutal, eventually meets the quiet judgment of time. The monster who once roared now whispers only through the ghosts he left behind. Ghosts that still wander the rivers, the streets, and the memories of a nation that survived him. Until next time, stay safe and see you in the next history.